Well, welcome to the Northeast Farms grass research plots run by SDSU in partnership with Natural Resources Conservation Service, the South Dakota Grassland Coalition, South Dakota Game Fish and Parks, and others. Here at the Northeast Farm, what we were able to do in cooperation with the farm managers is occupy some of the traditional crop ground with a new type of study that hadn't really been on the farm before, and that's long-term grass management plots. These were some compromised areas, low-lying areas that just weren't good for crop field research, plot research, and were a little bit underproductive for the row crop part of the farm. So we worked with the Natural Resources Conservation Service in funding, and the primary goal of these grassland plots is to study, manipulate, and try to figure out what some of the best management practices are going forward for establishing high diversity grassland stands. What we're doing is we're essentially, over these 9 plots, comparing what we think in the industry are best management practices against some of the maybe known or more conventional or traditional practices that you might find in an NRCS manual, NRCS being the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or in a manual for Conservation Reserve Program, CRP, or other types of grasslands. So what's behind me today, we're in our 3rd year of this project, 3rd growing season. And I'm just gonna highlight just a few things here. It's early July 2020, the third growing season. And as you can see behind me, what one of our goals is biological diversity in these grasslands. So we want grass stands to not just be grass. We want to have a variety of flowering plants, pollinator plants, etc. And that's essentially what success looks like in a grassland planting. And then the other thing that we're managing, or we're testing here, is management techniques. If you can see the plot to the west of me, it's a little browner, a little drier. That's a plot that we tested just this standard CRP mix methodology that you might get in any standard NRCS CRP mix. The other thing that we're testing there is we're trying to mimic what producers normally do on their farms. So normally when someone plants a CRP field, it's pretty much hands off. They're not going in and doing a lot of mowing, they're not doing a lot of burning. There may be some chemical application for weed control at some point. But more or less on large-scale CRP, it's been fairly hands-off. There's rules and regulations within the programs that even stipulate management techniques within things like the primary nesting season for migratory birds, etc. So that's what we're mimicking on that site. What we're mimicking on the site behind me right here is what we call adaptive management. Management that brings all the tools into the toolbox for the establishment of the grasslands as quickly as possible. So whereas that field was planted into a tilled bean stubble field, this was planted into a tilled bean stubble field, but then managed with all the suite of tools in our toolbox. So this has seen 2 years of early spring prescribed fire, as well as strategic mowing throughout the growing season in both 2018 and 2019. And to the casual observer driving by at 55 miles an hour, probably not a lot of difference. But you can see the coloration difference I think you can capture behind me. This was a spring burn done in late May. And so what the difference is that field is dominated by what we call early spring, cool season grasses. Native slender wheatgrass and our native Canada wild rye. The plot that I'm standing in, because it's been burned and mowed early on in the establishment phase, the variety and density of plants and wildflowers is a little better. We've got more warm season grasses coming, our big blue stems, our little blue stems, our switch grasses. And as you can see behind me, we've also got a plethora of flowering plants here for our pollinators, including wild milkweed. And that itself has been a topic in a lot of circles with pollinators over the last 10 years or so due to the Monarch Butterfly. Now, we can't see everything going through the plots today, and they're not perfect. Not every plot has turned out like we anticipated. We're trying to experiment with pre-cropping with cover crops on these grass plantings We've got plots that demonstrate cropping into wheat stubble. We've got plots that are essentially hands-off. And so to really get a feel for all of the variety of what you can learn, coming and visiting the farm and walking these plots really is the best way to go. But we can't do that today, so we'll try to explain as much as we can. And as we get into these plots behind me, you'll see that most of the diversity is not visible at 55 miles an hour driving by. You really got to get out in the grass to understand diversity. And what we've brought back to the farm in some small way, I believe, is more diversity than we'll see on the rest of the farm. The rest of the farm is essentially monocultural crop plots, specifically designed for answering a question. Ours are specifically designed to answer some management questions, but they just happen to harbor a great deal of life and provide a lot of variety for the farm. So the animals already that have kind of repopulated this, as you'll see as we do some close-ups, dragonflies, butterflies, a variety of grasshoppers. We've got several different species of grassland birds that are using the site already. We've got that's a female cowbird, but we've had dick thistles on site, we've had ring-necked pheasants, we've had Hungarian partridge. We had a doe whitetail dropped her fawn just behind me this spring. And so there's just brought a little bit of variety back to the farm, a little bit of something fun to walk through. Here we've got looks like a monarch butterfly coming up, right on our milkweed, right on cue. So that's kind of the fun part of the plots as well. Our goal over time, over the next few years, is to help producers understand the different phases of grassland restoration and grassland management. We don't get the full suite of species often in the first year or two. And so what we're really trying to highlight here is patience and specific targeted management actions that can end in having a grassland respond quicker. And why is that important? Well, that's important for profitability, diversity, wildlife habitat, etc. With the new grassland programs that have come out, we want grasslands to be very productive. We want producers to feel confident going into native grass species mixes. And we want to give them the tools that they can use to apply so that we don't knock out all this diversity. I had mentioned spraying earlier, and while that in extreme cases may still be necessary, what we're finding is that we can do a lot of weed competition with management. Now we'll see throughout these plots that there are things like Canada thistle, some bull thistle, but already those infestations are reducing over time. And that's due to the intensity of the management that we're able to apply on the site, while still preserving the core diversity that we planted.